Hi everybody, how are you doing today? I'm going to start sharing my screen, run through a bit of content here, and um, yeah, looking forward to today. So, going to start off with just a brief intro to Uncountable as a company, then going to discuss the status quo. So, what do we typically see in terms of data structure in R&D organizations, and then talk about the solution that would be of benefit to all R&D organizations. But if we were to start from the top and just give you a background to us as a company, we can go ahead and go from there. So, um, Uncountable's been around for about 6 years now and are spread across a few offices, with myself located in the San Francisco branch. Currently working with over 50, I believe actually over 60 customers today from a lot of different industries, some of which listed on the left, others conveyed by the logos on the right, probably the ones you're most familiar with in the similar industry: Cooper Standard, Airboss, natural fiber welding, but quite clear that some of these industries are quite different from one another. The one similarity that we happen to see across all of these teams, prior to working with Uncountable, was a similar challenge that we see across all of these R&D organizations. And it's this challenge of putting their data in a workable and centralized format, and because of that, not having the best opportunity to use this data for current and future developmental work. So what we have and what we present to all of these different R&D organizations is this all-in-one R&D software solution that, with this larger suite of tools, helps reduce experiments and overall development time. But before we get into how that happens, I want to discuss a little bit about the status quo amongst R&D organizations, of course, that of which in the rubber industry as well. So the problem we're specifically addressing here at Uncountable is this problem of unstructured, decentralized data being the biggest barrier to um, efficient and innovative product development work. And reason being is because we find that R&D organizations are amassing a lot of data from a multitude of tools, whether or not these are LIM solutions, whether or not they're ELNs, process historians, ERPs, or spreadsheets. All this data is spread all across an organization, and it resides in what we think of as separate buckets. And we say buckets because the data is disconnected for a couple pretty obvious reasons. First of which is that these systems are not compatible. And then second, when we talk about the most commonly used tool across all these teams, spreadsheets, we're talking about a lot of unstructured data. So we find that there's a lot of untapped potential, a lot of untapped insights that teams are completely missing from having these disjointed systems and heterogeneous data sources. So I name dropped a few of these systems just to reiterate what we commonly see across teams, spreadsheets being the #1 thing used across all different teams, using DOEs, using LIM systems, using lab notebooks, like I said, traditional electronic lab notebooks or the physical lab notebook. The status amongst ways of teams collecting data today has not really changed over the last few decades. And the other, call it, driver complexity that comes into the way data is collected today is not only the different tools that are used, is the fact that these tools are different across all of these teams. So for instance, you have an R&D organization that has 2 separate chemistry areas. And maybe within each individual chemistry area, we're talking about labs in different areas. Maybe one in the US, maybe one in Germany, and maybe the third in Japan. All of these different groups across the R&D organization are commonly using different tools. Like I said, different LIM solutions, different ways to collect data, whether or not they are throwing it into a hard drive, throwing it into a SharePoint, with no good real central way to collect all of that organizational know-how. So we're going to jump right into the solution. And what I want to start off with is just a little bit about Uncountable. So the reason why we find ourselves as the solution to the problem today first kind of touches on the fact that we are a trusted partner in the industry. We do have a lot of customers willing to talk or to attest on our behalf, whether or not they are from a 3D printing company like Carbon, where they do recognize us helping them accelerate development and helping them solve or speed up the solving of these complex problems they're working with, or enabling collaboration. As you know, if your counterparts are working on the same technology but across the seas, you don't really have the best opportunity to say, talk with them, learn about what they are actually working on in real time, or actually collaborate with your peers, maybe across the pond. So enabling collaboration. Then lastly, which we're going to focus on today, is connecting all the dots of your data. So this leads into an increase in efficiency that's attributed to the fact of this disparate data problem. And with a system like Uncountable being able to connect all the dots, analysis, reporting, or just overall learning that is kind of bogged down in this data curation or data collection or preparation process goes from hours or days just to a matter of minutes. So what Uncountable acts as is this all-in-one R&D software solution. But what makes us different across or versus traditional solutions is that everything within the system in Uncountable revolves around this formula and property database. So think about all the information that goes into an experiment. We have your formulation, we have ingredients, we have process parameters on one side of things. And on the flip side of things, we have your corresponding measurements. But as you add in any additional layer of complexity, maybe we're talking about a complex experimental workflow. Maybe we're talking about a part A, part B mixture. Maybe we're talking about some ingredient attributes or some stoichiometric ratio you need to keep in mind, or some cost variable that you need to keep in mind. And on the flip side of things, maybe we're not only talking about a test, but we're talking about a test done at some condition like aging time and aging temp. What's unique about Uncountable is that as you add in these different layers of complexity, it's always automatically interconnected within the Uncountable platform. And what you might see that's done in some systems today, it's typically done for maybe a production formulation and the corresponding physical properties. But within Uncountable, we're taking all of that research data, all of these different iterations that are required for you to reach a production formulation, connecting it and structuring it so it's made available to a team. Now, we do have quite a comprehensive solution, but we give teams the opportunity to pick and choose what's most appropriate for them. And then also connecting to existing software streams today with the goal of mind of contributing to the build of a data infrastructure that we find is necessary to not only maximize resources amongst the R&D team, but also quite critical in unearthing insights that we find help accelerate development. So like I said a second ago, is that the system is intended to fit in the middle of your digital ecosystem. As you know, companies in the rubber industry, they've been operating for quite some time. And for us to come in and say, hey, you need to rip everything out and use Uncountable for everything across the board would be an unrealistic ask. So what we commonly find ourselves doing is connecting to whatever existing data streams that the teams want to continue to use today. Whether or not it is ERP, say SAP or Oracle, where they want us to pull in their most up-to-date ingredient cost information. But they want us to push back out production formulations, very common workflow done today. Or maybe some organizations have an existing LIM solution, and the LIM solution is so ingrained in their operations and maybe used across their global operations, it doesn't make sense to rip it out from today. It's completely fine. What we do is we allow for us to connect to that today, so we can pull in your results from your tests and connect it to the corresponding formulation. But the fact of the matter is that we do want to play well with other software solutions, because we know that everybody's current situation is different from organization to organization. Now, Uncountable facilitates horizontal communication between teams working on the same applications. This means that you have a team in the US, you have a team in Germany, you have a team in Japan working on the same technology, but also want to benefit from the learnings from each individual team. So if we have a centralized and kind of collaborative data environment that teams can pick and pull from, they don't find themselves doing duplicate work or find themselves not kind of benefiting from things that have already been done in the past. But not also horizontal communication, but also vertical communication between teams. Maybe if you're a larger rubber organization and you have a team that is synthesizing a polymer, and maybe you have another team that's using this polymer in some sort of application development. What we have on the platform is this hierarchy, so you can use the output from one group, this polymer, as the input from another group, this applications team. And this is all attributed to this data standardization model that allows for a similar kind of format across all different teams and an entry of data that is quite similar and seamless to use, so that it can be flexible and work for these teams working on different technologies. Now, an example of what that might look like is where we have a intermediate, so this blend or this mixture, as a subcomponent in your actual formulation. And you can see if you just click into a drop down here, you could see the composition of that subcomponent as an example of these connected experiments. But not only are you able to see in a tabular view as you're actually working on formulations, you can also see it in this process flowchart view of the world. So you can see where these subcomponents are used throughout further downstream formulations. Another way that Uncountable helps standardization is through recording the results of your tests. So this is a good example here, because if you think about a traditional LIM solution, a traditional LIM solution is going to take this particular test and probably have it in a free text format. Stability, 23 degrees C over aging time of 2 weeks using this method B. Within the Uncountable platform, we do create these as separate conditions for your test, so that we can actually have these as different values here: 23 degrees C, 2 weeks, method B. And the true benefit here not only comes from from the actual structure that I'm showing off here, is from searchability. So I can actually search for all my stability results at 23 degrees C, but also in the analysis of your data. So that because you are collecting it in a structured manner, you're able to learn and dissect the data, being that you are collecting it in a very clean manner. This is just an example here of the searching capability of it, being that you were able to kind of create that condition of aging temp, so that your results do show, or in this case, stability at everything above 50 or everything above 75 done at 50 degrees C. Also, another standardization example, a benefit of structuring your data like that, is that you're able to do things like, for instance, calculate a viscosity change automatically, because we could see that in this case, we have viscosity done at 100 degrees C at an aging time interval of 0 weeks and 2 weeks, automatically computing a thing like viscosity change, being that we are collecting your data in a structured manner. So the same kind of calculations you see on your static Excel sheets are done consistently across the platform. But along with the collection of your data, everybody always asks, what is the actually added benefit of having your data structured in the system? And I hate to go back to a previous slide here, but it's pretty clear. So accelerating development, enabling collaboration, increasing efficiency when you're trying to analyze or learn from your data, but also the cherry on top, which I talked about in the prior presentation, is machine learning. So what we have in the Uncountable platform are built-in predictive tools that are able to feed from this wealth of organizational know-how that you guys have collected. So what the Uncountable system is doing is, by teams doing their day-to-day lab work, working on new formulations, recording the results of your tests, creating lab requests, and having everybody collaborate in this tool, everybody is inadvertently adding to their machine learning models' understanding of their own formulating space. So you're able to do things like on this slide right here, being able to have the system suggest a formulation that is most suitable for you to achieve some desired performance characteristics. And here's another graphic right here. Not only being able to have it suggest formulations, but being able to learn. Maybe in this case, looking at a surface plot and understanding the relationship of two inputs towards one of your key properties. Or on the right-hand side, being able to predict the performance of one of your formulations based on prior data. So think of this as the cherry on top, but you can't have one without the other. The reason I show this as the last piece of the presentation is because the first problem that needs to be solved is how do we get everybody collaborating in a single source of data entry? How do we get people out of spreadsheets? And how do we get everybody to, like I said, attribute to their companies or their organizations' machine learning models understanding of their formulating space? But that does include everything I have prepared for today. Thank you for your time.